Welcome to Movies Playback, where we unravel the magic of movies one frame at a time. The movie starts on November 9th. In the Palm Springs desert, an earthquake splits the earth open as a goat looks on. Niles awakens in his hotel room with his girlfriend Misty, where they're in town for the wedding of Misty's best friend Tyler and Abe. Misty and Niles have a bad and awkward sex, and she leaves before it's finished. Niles seems dead inside and tells Misty to kill him. Afterwards, Niles lays on a pool raft drinking beer in a Hawaiian shirt and shorts talking to groomsman Jerry. Niles shows up in the same outfit. Misty gives a speech, and then when father of the bride Howard prompts Tyler's sister, Sarah, to give a speech, she panics, having nothing prepared, so Niles swoops in and gives a perfect wedding speech. A creepy guy named Randy tries to dance with Sarah, she declines, and Niles dances over to her. Niles flirts with Sarah, who wonders what his girlfriend would think, but then Niles shows her Misty having sex with Trevor in the window of their room. Niles and Sarah bond, as she says her family is embarrassed of her and thinks she's a drunk mess. They end up making out in the desert, and as they start to undress each other, an arrow shoots into Niles's arm. He begins running as a man named Roy begins chasing him down, firing another arrow into his leg as Sarah screams in horror. Eventually, Niles makes it to a glowing cave and begins dragging himself into it. Sarah catches up to him, and he screams at her not to follow him as he is suddenly sucked into the glowing light. Niles wakes up on the exact same day. He's been in a time loop reliving the same day over and over. He goes about his business and is laying in the pool when Sarah runs out demanding answers. In a flashback, we see Sarah followed Niles into the cave and woke up on the day of the wedding. Confused and disoriented, Howard finds her behavior strange. Sarah runs out to the pool and dives in to confront Niles, attacking him. When Tyler rushes out to see what's going on, she trips and smashes her face into the pavement, knocking out her front teeth. The wedding party begins trying to help her as she sobs hysterically. Sarah goes to Niles to talk about what's happening to them. She demands to be taken out to the cave, which isn't there, until an earthquake opens it up, which Niles says happens at the same time every day. She enters the cave and again wakes up on the day of the wedding. She panics and drives all the way back to Austin, but again wakes up the day of the wedding. She meets Niles and they go for a drive where he explains his story with the time loop, and says he's been in it so long that he's given up and that nothing matters. He says he's killed himself plenty of times, and Sarah drives into an oncoming truck. They wake up on the day of the wedding and go to a local bar where Darla is, and Niles challenges her to a game of darts that he already has perfected and knows he will win. The darts remind Sarah of the arrows, and she asks about Roy. Niles explains what happened. Roy was a guest at the wedding who had driven up from Irvine. In flashback, Roy meets Niles at the wedding and they become friendly. They steal cocaine from Trevor and party hard all night until they're very messed up. Niles takes Roy to the cave and tells him his ancestors are in there, and Roy goes inside. Though Niles at the last minute realizes what he's doing and tries to stop him but is too late. Niles tells Sarah that now as punishment Roy comes up some days from Irvine and tortures him as revenge. Sarah says Niles needs to confront him, but Niles doesn't see the point. They get lunch and Sarah asks him if he's sex with different people at the wedding. He tells her and we see times he's had sex with Daisy the wedding bartender, Darla, and Jerry. He admits he's tried with Tyler and never been successful. Finally, he tells Sarah how he had sex with Howard. Though it turns out he's just kidding on that last one. She asks if they've ever had sex, and he says no. Sarah comes up with a theory that they're trapped in the loop as punishment, and that the only way to escape is be selfless and earn your way out. At the next wedding, Sarah stops the ceremony and whispers something in Tyler's ear that devastates her and leaves. The earthquake happens and Sarah wakes up again on the day of the wedding. It didn't work, so Sarah and Niles go to a local house he calls his safe house because the owners aren't home that day to hang out. A montage happens of the many days in the time loop. They steal and crash a plane, do a big choreographed dance number, trick Randy into walking in on Misty and Trevor, put a bomb in the wedding cake and save the wedding, and Sarah throws a millionth birthday party for Niles in the bar. One night, Niles and Sarah camp out in the desert. Niles says the next moment is all that matters in the time loop. Sarah confesses she used to be married and it ended badly. They toast to pretending not to care, and high on mushrooms and see dinosaurs in the desert. Sarah and Niles finally have sex in their camping tent. Sarah wakes up again in the same morning and it turns out she had slept with Abe the night before the wedding, and is disgusted with herself. Niles tries to talk to her about them sleeping together, but she says everything is meaningless. They get pulled over by a cop who turns out to be Roy. Sarah steals the cop car and crushes Roy with it and acts wild and gleeful. Niles is upset with her and says other people's pain matters. They get into a massive fight. Sarah blames Niles for being in the situation. He tells her he warned her not to go into the cave. She says she never should have fucked him, and he confesses they've fucked 1,000 times. Sarah is horrified that he lied to her. He says he didn't want to tell her. She says she is determined to get out of this day and runs in front of a truck. Over the next days in the time loop, Niles looks for Sarah everywhere and can't find her. Eventually, when the groomsmen are doing cocaine in Abe's bedroom, Niles recognizes the smell of Sarah's hair product on his pillow and realizes what happened. He goes to the wedding and exposes Abe for sleeping with Sarah, and yells at everyone for treating Sarah so poorly. Abe attacks him, and they get into a fist fight which ends with Niles stabbing Abe in the face with a fork. Later, Niles sits with Jerry and cries that he misses Sarah and that he loves her. Niles goes to Irvine to see Roy and asks Roy to torture him again. He sees his wife and 2 kids and seemingly happy home. When he met Roy the first time, he said marriage was a bottomless pit of sorrow, and Roy explains priorities change. He now realizes he will never see his kids grow up. He tells Niles that after Sarah crushed him with the car, he realized what he was putting Niles through and that he's not coming after him anymore. He tells Niles to find his own Irvine, or happy place. Roy says it's probably best they don't see each other anymore, and Niles asks Roy to kill him one more time, which he does. We see in flashback that after Sarah got hit by the bus, she woke up and confronted Abe about what happened between them. He begins crying and says he feels terrible. Sarah says she's done being shitty. She spends day after day in the time loop learning about and researching quantum physics. Eventually she takes the goat and covers it with explosives and sends it into the cave, detonating it once it's inside. Niles wakes up and finds Sarah at his bedside. He apologizes to her, and she thanks him, but explains she thinks she's found a way out of the loop. She explains if they blow themselves up at the moment the cave sucks them in, they'll leave the time loop. The goat wasn't there the next day like it always was. She doesn't know it will spit them out the next day, or in 20 years, or just kill them. Niles is scared to leave. He tells Sarah he loves her, and she questions if he would choose her if they weren't trapped together, and that it isn't real inside the loop. He tells her he knows about Abe and doesn't care about that, but she says she can't keep waking up in his bed. She says she's leaving and asks him to come with her. He says no but asks her to stay with him. She leaves. Niles breaks up with Misty, and at the last wedding, Sarah gives a truly moving speech and warns Abe not to fuck things up. Niles is depressed and drinking at the bar knowing Sarah is leaving. He doesn't know how to live outside the loop, but Dada points out to him that no one knows how to live. He realizes what he needs to do and steals a truck and races to find Sarah. He catches her just before she goes into the cave and gives a long speech, saying she's his favorite person he ever met, and that he'd rather die with her than live in the world without her. She asks, "What if we get sick of each other?" He says they already are. Sarah tells him she loves him too. They kiss and go into the cave. Just before they are sucked in, Sarah detonates the explosives. The movie ends as Niles and Sarah are floating in the pool at the safe house. Niles says that next they'll have to go get his dog that's staying at the neighbor's. Sarah says she never realized he had a dog, just as the family who owns the house shows up and demands to know what they're doing in their pool. Niles realizes they must have gotten back from their trip on November 10th. In a mid-credits scene we see Roy arrives to the wedding and tells Niles he got Sarah's message about the crazy plan and wonders if it actually could work. When Niles has no idea who he is, Roy realizes that the plan works, and smiles. Thank you for joining us on this cinematic journey. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more movie magic. Until next time, Happy watching.